Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to day 60 of 100 Days of Code with me, Lily Code. Thank you so much for joining me. We're getting back into it again this morning, as always. So, let's get going. I'm following Max's tutorial, as always, as well, and just gonna keep on going. Cool. Okay, alrighty. So, the way Max actually added this disabled button was, rather than disabling the button, let's just have a look. So that button should be disabled. Rather than disabling the button, he stopped this whole block showing. If he didn't show the button, if there wasn't an order to be placed. So the way he did that was put it in a JSX statement, this button, and then he said has items. So if it does not have items, so we'll add the not symbol at the front. If it does not have items. Okay, no. If it has items, if it has items and show this button. So, and then if we do not have items, the button should be disabled. But now if we don't have items, we shouldn't even see the button. Cool, so we can see there the button disappeared, the order button. If I just duplicate this for a moment and go back, we had got the button there a second ago, so I'll show you guys that. So now we can see the order button is back. If I go back to the way of with the conditional on this button in a JSX statement, checking have we got items, and if we do, then show the button, which is this particular configuration at the top. The second one was disabling the button if we have no items. So I'll just comment that out again and you can see the button goes away. So great, cool. That's working. And now if we add a few items, we should see the button updating, but my add is not working. So sorry. Okay, so Max has added a cart item component here that we need to copy into our project. So where did he get this cart item from? Let's have a look in our files. Let's find it. So cart item, yeah, I don't have a cart item. So YouTube, Max 100 days. We are on chapter 11, I think. So 11, let's go to code, let's go to making items removable, source, components, cart, and here's the cart item. Okay, cool. So we'll copy these because that's what he's just told us to do, and we'll paste them into our cart and see what this is going to. Why can I not paste? See what this is going to do. So I'll just open this back up. I'll copy these and I'll paste it in a different fashion. I'll just paste it directly into my project within the file system here, within the file finder. So we'll go to components, we'll go to cart, and I'll paste these two in here. Cool. Okay, so now we should see those two. Yep, so cart item and CartItem.js. I wonder why we didn't type this out, but we haven't done that. So he's going to import these now into our cart and use these. So maybe it's just very repetitive. It's things we've done a lot of times before. So we'll import cart item from cart item. So now we have it in this particular cart component. And then down where we're looping over our cart context and we're getting our different items and we're mapping each item, What we want to map them into instead of a list item now is into a cart item, which is just going to give it a bit more configuration, styling. We've just separated out these items into their own components, which makes sense. This is sort of how we set up React projects. If you have something you can take out into its own component, it's good to do that and keep separation of concerns. So we'll move this to the end. We'll get rid of this closing list item tag because it's no longer closing an opening list item tag. And there we go. And then we're going to have to populate this cart item as well. So we can actually make this a self-closing tag. So you can close it off with another tag, or you can make it a self-closing tag like that. So that's has its own closing tag, and then we're just going to make this self-closing. And then cart item, if we go and have a look at cart item is going to be expecting some things. So I'll just close everything else here, close others, because we're getting busy in the top. You know what I mean? You know what I mean. So now we have our cart item, which is taking in our props, and we're calculating the price. And we can see here we're using our classes to do different things. So some of the things we're expecting in from our props here is the price, the amount, the price, props.price, props.amount, on remove, and on add. So these are the things that we need to pass in here. So first of all as well, seeing as this is a list of different cart items, we also need a key, or else React will give out to us saying, oh, you don't have a key. You need to know which item is which item in this list. So we add a key value first of all. And this is just going to be equal to the item.id. We want the name. So this will be item.name. The amount, item.amount, and the price. And we also need them on add and on remove functions that we were expecting in. So we'll pass them in as well. So first of all, I'll just bring all this down to make this a bit neater, or readable, I should say, not even more neater, but just might give us a better idea of exactly what's being passed in here. So we can do that like that, and then we'll create our handlers that we're also going to need. So we have these different constants here. I can create my two handlers. So I'll say const on add item, or what are we expecting here? On remove and on add. So we'll say cart item remove. And we're going to pass in the ID of the item. And then perform a function on that in order to remove the item. And we also want the cart item add handler. I should add handler. Cart item add handler. So handler, but when we are adding an item, we're not just adding the ID, we're adding the whole item. Whereas for removing it, if we just pass the ID, we can then check the ID against the list of the other items and we can remove it just with the ID. Whereas when we're adding the item, we need to pass in all the information of that item, excuse me. So that's what's going on. So now we can hook these up. So down here on our cart item, we can add an on remove and an on add. And these are going to be linked up to these handlers. So these are the functions that are going to run when we add something and when we remove something. So if I copy this, and right now we see down in our terminal we have an error. A cart JSX attribute must only be assigned a non-empty expression on line 26. So it's very obvious what that is, but just to show you how to read these and you know what this means. So literally you have your little arrow here, it's telling you this cannot be empty. So once we just paste in that name there, and then even if you didn't have the name, you'd think, well, what is it that I need to pass into this on remove? Do I need the on remove? Maybe you could remove it, or maybe you do need to create a handler or some sort of a function to handle the new property that you're adding onto this cart item, the on remove. So that's, might as well just explain things. That's sort of all what we're doing here. Cool. Okay. Yes, and the reason why we add on remove and on add, because in our cart item here, they're the props that we're actually expecting: on remove, on add, amount, price. So we call them these things because that's what it's going to look for in the props that are coming in when we declare this component and we use it. So here we have the component declaration, and we're actually using this here. And these are the different properties we're passing in, which all match up to the props that we are seeing in the other file. So great. Well, these ones here actually, and then this is what we're passing in for them. So the item.id, the item.name. So as we loop through each item, we're assigning the name from the particular item in that iteration. .name, so the name of the item that we're currently looking at, the item amount that we're currently looking at, the item price, and we're assigning those to these values: name, amount, price, on remove, on add, and passing those through to the cart item so it can access them with the dot props. That's what's going on there. Okay, so in order to make sure that these functions are executed in the right way, we want to bind. So we'll bind null here, and in the cart item remove handler and the ID. So this is just the way of sending this over. So we say bind, and then we have null and the item itself. All we're doing is pre-configuring the argument that the function will receive when it's being executed. So okay. Okay, cool. So also we just want to make sure that the height of our cart can't get too tall, too high. So in our cart module.css, in our cart items, yeah, we'll just add a maximum height. So if we have loads of items, if we have loads of items in our cart, it won't continue to go down the whole page. You know, now it has a maximum height, and we'll also add an overflow of hidden, because this will, or no, an overflow of scroll, because this will allow us to see those items if they do go off the page. So if it's too long, it'll give it a max height of 20 rem, and we'll be able to scroll within that content because we've told it this content is now scrollable. So super. Okay, so in our cart item, Cool, yeah. I was just checking that we had two fixed too, which we do, so that's okay. So what we want to make sure that's going to happen now is that if we add items to the cart, when we add items to the cart, that, say perhaps if we have 3 pieces of sushi, that it will show up in the cart as sushi with ×3 as opposed to listing sushi 3 times. So that's what we're going to work on next, is just the logic to multiply the amount by however many items we have in the cart for that particular item that we've added. Cool, yeah. So what we're going to do is in here in our cart reducer, this is where we have our reducer, cart reducer, which is taking in the current state of the cart and then the action. And the action in this type is adding. So this is what happens when we add an item to the cart. This is ran here. So we have our updated items, which is our state.items, and we're just concating on or adding on another item and not mutating the previous version of the array. Concat creates a new copy of the array. And then we also have our updated total amount, which is taking in the total amount from the current state. So whatever items are in the current trolley or cart, the state is representing all of those items in the cart, the total amount of those. Then we have the action.item.price. Yes, and then we have the action.item.amount. So what this is doing is multiplying the price of the item by how many items we have for that particular item. So what we also want to do is just check here if we have an item already in the cart. So we'll say const existing item already exists, or create a variable for whether or not this item is already in the cart. So let's say existing cart item index, and for this we'll take in the current state, so the state of the cart currently, get the items in there and find the index. And this will allow us, this is a built-in function which will allow us to check whether or not we already have an item in the cart. So the way we'll do this is find index takes in a function, and what we'll pass into this function is the item. So this is the current item that we are passing in, and we'll do our arrow function, and what we want to check is this: if the item.id, so the ID of the current item, is equal to the action.item.id. So what this is doing is for checking each item in the cart and pulling up its item ID and checking if it is definitely the same as the current one coming into this cart reducer function, the ID of that particular item. So we're just looping over the cart and checking if we have an item of the same ID as the one that's coming in. So that's what's going on there. So then if we have that, we get the index of where it exists and a true or false value. So it'll tell us yes or no. So what we can do then is, I'll just bring this down. So we'll put our item here. So we're just passing in our item. And then drop this down just to make it a bit cleaner, so we can see exactly what's going on there. And then we'll create another constant, existing cart item, and this will be the state.items, and then at the current existing cart item. So this is going to give back where we have this current, so this should actually be existing cart item index, so it's going to come back and tell us where we have this item that's the same. So then we have that location, we can paste it in here, and then we can save that in a variable, which is the existing cart item. And it's okay to do this once, you know, we don't need to put this within the loop or anything like that, because what this is doing is bringing in one particular item on each dispatch of this function. So when we dispatch this cart reducer, we pass in the action and we have the add being called as the action type. So it's one item coming in and we do all of this computation on the one item before we add it to the cart. So once we find a match, we're only matching the current item coming in against the current items that we have in the cart. So if there's a match, grand, there's a match, it's already in the cart, and we can keep that item, take note of where that item is and assign it to this current variable called existing cart item. So if there was nothing in the cart, we just get back null, and in the case that there is something in the cart, we'll have existing cart item set. So then we can create let updated item and let updated items. So if existing cart item, which means we have something that was a match, otherwise it would be null. Then we'll change updated item to a new object, which is going to be the existing cart items. Updated items. So we're going to spread out the current state.items. I'm just going to explain all this now in a moment when I have this wrote. So the updated items, and that's equal to the spread of our current state.items, and then we have our updated items. And this is our existing cart item index. It's equal to our updated item. Cool. So what's going on here now is we've checked by this find index whether or not we have an item in the cart. If we do, we've assigned it to this existing cart item variable. So in the case we have something, there will be something stored in there. So if existing cart item, this means there was indeed a duplicate item that's coming in, something that's already been added to the cart. So we're creating this updated item. And what we're doing here, well, we already had updated items, which was our list that we were concatenating on our other items. So that's why we've used let, because it means we can mutate this updated items now down here. So if we let updated items, we can come in here and redefine it. So what we're doing is we're spreading out the current cart items. So this is the spread operator. So for all the items in the cart, get the amount of them and add on the action.item.amount. Perfect. Then we have our updated items is equal to all of the items in the cart. This spread operator is spreading out the items that we have stored in this state. So by accessing state.items, we're just saying for every single item in the state, listed out into a new array there. And then here we have updated items, which is our existing cart item index, which is the current when we have a current item in the cart, when we have something already in the cart that we're trying to add again, we're just assigning this to our updated item. And this should be like this, not the bracket outside like that. So basically, from the updated items we have with the at the current index of the existing cart item, so wherever the location of this item that's already in the cart is, this is how we access that. So you're accessing this would be a number, you know, so it might say, oh, 3 was a duplicate. So this is saying for the array of updated items at index 3, assign this to the updated item. So now we have our updated item and our updated items. Yep, cool. Okay, great. So now we know what to do in the case that we have an item in the cart and in the case that we do not have an item in the cart. Okay, so now in our cart item, in our cart, we have our cart item add handler. So we're taking in our item here and we want to tell it what to do when we add this item to the cart. So we have our item coming in and we're going to get the cart context, yep, and add an item. And the item that we want to add is so we'll spread out the items. Item and the amount. And the amount is just going to be one of these because we're adding in one of them. So each time, yeah, we add in a new item, we're only passing in one item at the moment. Okay. So this is actually for the cart item, right? So when we are adding an item to the cart and we have a new cart item, we want to add another item to the cart. Okay, so we have handled the addition of an item to the cart, but have we handled the removal of an item to the cart? So back here in the cart provider, we have, if our action type is add, what we want to do in that case, but we also want to take care of if the action is remove. So I'll add another if check here. If action.type is remove, okay, so actually this return is the return for the addition function. So let's just check out, follow our parentheses here and make sure that we're adding this in the right place. Okay, so here is our if block saying if it's of type add. So we need another if block down here saying if type remove. So if type add, do this. And then if that's not the case, if the action.type is not add, it will just skip this whole block of code and come down here and check if the action type is remove. And if it is, it will execute the code within this block. And then if neither of those exist, if there's some other action type that we haven't considered, it'll just return the default cart state for now. So whatever this cart state was when we first started. So we need to think about this as well from the same way as we did when we're adding something. So when we're removing something, if there's something already in the cart of that item, so say if we have 3 sushis, we don't want to just remove all the sushi. We want to remove one of those sushis. So we have 2 sushis left. So that's what we're going to configure now. So first of all, we'll start off by binding the card item. So all we're going to do is what we did previously in order to check if this item is in the cart. So if I come back up here to my add function now, we are checking if existing cart item is equal to state.items.findIndex. So we just want to do the same thing here to find out, does it exist or not? And then once we finish this, once we've checked if we actually have that item, we'll assign that to a variable. So we'll have const existing item, let's just call it this time, and we'll assign that to state.items at the location of the existing cart item that we've just found the location of by checking through each item in the array and checking where there was a match, if there was a match. If there wasn't, then this will not be set. So now what we can do is create another constant. So we'll have an updated total amount. We're removing an item here, so we'll get state.total amount. So we have the current state, we have the total amount of the current state, and we will remove the existing item dot price. Okay, so here we're going to check whether or not we have two of these items in the cart. Well, we've already checked that. Now we're going to say what we want to do in the case that we have one or more items in the cart. So if we have existing item dot amount is equal to 1, let updated items. Okay, so that should just be on its own line. Sorry, that's why I'm getting errors here. And then this is going to be an if block. So if existing item dot amount is equal to 1, so if we have one of these existing items, then this is what we want to do. And then we'll have an else block in the case that that's not the case. So here we're just going to create or update, I should say, our updated items. So we'll just say updated items, which is going to allow us to use and reassign this. So rather than doing the let updated items, we can just do let here again, the same way we've seen up above. And if we don't change the value of this, we can actually just change that to a constant then. So we can do that like this rather than doing it on one line and doing it again. So a let updated items equals state dot items dot filter, and this will filter through each item in the array by a specific condition. So here we'll have item So we filter it by a specific condition. So for each item in the array, if the thing that we're trying to look for, so say if we have an array of numbers and we say is number or item, the item in the array, greater than 5. So if we had an array of up to 1 to 5, it would go through each item, or 1 to 10, let's say, it would go through each item in this array. It would perform a check. So for 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, they would all return true and they wouldn't be added to the new array. But as soon as we get to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, yes, they are greater than 5. They're true. They get added to a brand new array that just contains the items that were truthy from this filter. So it filters out items in the array based on some condition, which is you give it all of that information. Okay. So here, when we're removing an item, we want to compare the ID of the item currently coming in And then in our remove cart handler, okay, so here we are calling the parameter going in is the ID, and then if the type is remove, we have a parameter of ID. So actually this should just be action.id because that's what we've called it down below. And we just needed to uncomment this, so we have our remove item from cart handler, which is the handler that we have that's going to allow us to remove an item. So this is with our use dispatch, and we have types add and remove, and the thing that we are passing in here is the ID of whatever is being passed in, and this is being assigned to ID. So then up here we can access that by just saying action.id because everything comes in on the action. So now here we want to check if item ID is not equal to action.id. And these should be regular parentheses. Yep. So what we're doing here is, we'll just finish this off. So we have go through each item and check for the item.id. And if it is not equal to the action.id. So what we're doing here is we're saying if we only have one of these items in the array, if the existing item.amount is 1, then create a new list where we take out any items that don't currently match the action.id. So we're just taking out everything that isn't that new item that we've put in. So we're creating a new array with the items that should be left in the array, and removing the one that has the same ID as the item that we're passing in. So by saying here what we're doing, this filter function, item.id is not equal to action.id. The action.id is the ID of the item that is coming into this function. It's the item we're trying to remove from the cart. So we're passing an item into the remove function, an ID of an item. So we're saying if the action.id does not equal any of the items in the array, remove it. So then in the other case, what we want to do, rather than just removing it all together and creating a new array without this item altogether, in the case that we have more than one of these items in the array, which is what the else is going to be, then we are going to just update the items in the array. So we have our updated item, and what we are doing is creating a new object, which we are spreading out. We are adding the existing item to this object, and then the amount is the existing item dot amount minus 1. So we're just taking away 1 from this current existing item, which we have stored in this object. So we'll have the amount property associated with the item, and we can just take 1 away from that. And then we're going to also update our updated items. And we want this to be our state.items. So this is all the current items we have. That's what our updated items currently is. And then what we want to do is use all of these items. So we'll say updated items at the existing cart item index. So wherever the current item is, well, this should actually be, yes, that's perfect. Yeah. So at the actual index of the item that we're trying to remove, we want to access that in the array of updated items, and we want to just equal this to updated item. And now we can return a new state. So here we'll just replace these values. So return out a new object, and that's going to have our items, which is our updated items, because we have reassigned that now. We know what's in there. And then we have our total amount, which we have also rejigged to minus the amount of the current item that we're trying to remove. So we've taken that one away now. So we have our new total amount, and this is going to be our updated total amount now. Updated total amount. Perfect. So now in our cart, we have done the logic for the remove. So back up here in our cart, when we are running this cart item remove handler, we just want to hook up that logic. So here we'll have our cart context, remove item, and remove the item at that particular ID. So perfect. So I've just noticed as well we have a few errors. I did notice we had errors a while ago, so like, yeah, it doesn't surprise me that they've continued to be added on each other. Okay, so here it's giving out about updated items. It's saying it's already been declared. So on line 18 of our cartprovider.js. So on line 18, let's highlight this. Okay, so yeah, here we have a const updated items. So we have indeed declared that twice, because here we're telling it to let it be something else, and here it's already something. So instead, what we want to do, well, we definitely don't want to do that anyway. That makes perfect sense. Okay, so we're taking in our state and our action into our reducer function, and we have the action type of add. So this line, updated items. So okay, so we're passing in something with to this dispatch function, and we're giving it the type add. So now we can run the dispatch, and this is the dispatch that we're running. This is our reducer. This is the functions that run when we use dispatch. So we've got the current state of whatever it is we're passing in, and then the action. So okay, so if action.type, is equal to add, then we have our updated items is equal to state.items.concatenate action.item. But down here we are updating our updated items. So I don't think we need to concatenate the action.item up here. Else we want to updated items. So for the minute, I'm just going to comment this out. Maybe we're going to break something further down, but let's just say and work through some of the other errors as well. Okay, so then we have return outside of a function on line 55. Okay, so this is saying it's outside of the function. So we have const cart reducer is state.action. If it's remove, okay. Well, this should be a catch-all. Just return the default cart state. Ah, okay, so it is outside of the function. So why is that not properly syntax highlighted, then this should be in one. This shouldn't be here, it looks like. So this should indeed be up here, because we can see here that this yellow parentheses is ending here. So we need it to be within this particular function. I don't think that should be there. I think we've somehow lost flow of our brackets here. So let me just open this up. So then we have find index if else doesn't have an opening parentheses. Okay, so that was definitely throwing things off. Then we have our return. Okay, so that's what it was. Do we have our pink closing bracket? No, we don't. Okay, right, and there we go. Yeah, cool. So I just forgot the else bracket there, so that definitely would have thrown things off. Then if we reload again, let's just see what's going down. So we have item is not defined, and updated items is not defined, and ID is not defined. So let's start at the top. We have our cart.js line 30. This ID, yes. Yeah, it was telling me that, all right. Okay. Guys, we've just hit the hour. quick escape. But yeah, we've hit the hour, and you know, I'm going to actually go away and think about this a little bit and come back, because I need to just add up all these moving pieces and sort of think through it, and then come back, because and you know, I'll even come back, and once I've done that process, come back and regurgitate it live. But there's no point in just like trying to do all that thinking on the camera, and especially not if we've hit the hour, because adios amigos. But thanks so much for joining me, Lily Code, on another episode of 100 Days of Code. Do stay tuned for more tutorial based videos. This is just me coding for an hour a day. I really appreciate every single one of you that comes here to check me out. It means the absolute world. And if you do like my content, please do like and subscribe so other people can see it, and because it makes me so happy. So thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate you all. Love you all. Have a fantastic day, and just go out there and enjoy yourselves. So thanks very much. Bye.